Greetings, fellow scale modelers. I thought I'd give a quick report back on what I've been doing, even though it's been the Christmas and the New Year season, and of course, season's greetings to all of you. I wanted to give a short report of my progress, little though it is. I think I have mentioned before that I'm going to use 6 molds for the fuselage: the nose section, the center section, and the tail section. I was advised by somebody that I should make the plug as a single piece, but that plug is about 3.2 meters long, and I decided that's a bit too long to handle, so I shall make my plug with a doweled joint at each of the 2 fuselage brakes in front of the wing and behind, so that I can at least handle it. I will then make the first molds with section 1 and 2 joined together, and then I will make the center mold with sections 1, 2 and 3 joined together, and this rear mold with joints with sections 2 and section 3. The reason I want to do that is I do want to get sanding continuity so that the profile matches exactly at where the future joints in the plug and the future joints in the fuselage itself will be. I am currently working on the fuselage profile from drawings, and I'm having a bit of a problem in as much as I know the nose is an ellipsoidal section, so that all the ribs are actually circular, but there is a problem that ellipsoid is displaced horizontally. So although the fuselage itself is circular, I have not yet worked out what happens with the nose ellipsoidal section. In plan view, and I think this may be a mistake, is that the nose section appears to go tangential at the first fuselage joint, but that may just be a drafting convention. I have noticed a lot of differences between the 6 or 7 Canberra drawings that I have, differences amongst each other, and it is not exactly sure which of those is correct. Unfortunately, one would not expect to be able to get, and I have not tried to get original drawings for the Canberra, and such original drawings themselves would be nice to have, but very difficult to search through. I am planning to make my fuselage using 6 molds. Each mold will be taken off the plug with a vertical fence created flange, which will then be bolted to each adjacent section, and I'm hoping to build a special jig on my bandsaw so that I can cut the circular sections correctly. I hope to show some photographs of this under construction, the jig and the actual plug itself. But before I can do that, I had originally planned that the plug would be built out of plywood circular formers, planked with maybe 3 or 4 millimeter wood, and I thought I would first make a test section to ensure that I have got the right thicknesses. I plan to use a polyester resin filler between the various planks, because I can use a polyester plug and then take my epoxy molds off of that before I build the epoxy fuselage itself. The reason I'm doing this is that the polyester resin has a higher shrinkage than the epoxy resin, and the primary reason for using epoxy resins for the molds and for the actual final model is to minimize shrinkage problems, whereas I don't have that same problem in the actual plug itself. If I wanted to build the plug out of solid wood, there is just such a huge volume of solid wood that it would make it unviable and very, very expensive. I plan to join the left and right hand sides of the nose section and the center section and the tail section before I lay up, so that I don't have any joining issues to deal with in the form of tape down seams. It is quite possible to do this, but I don't think I want to do it that way. I am planning that we will start with a 3-section plug, make the 6 molds, join to 3 molds, and then do the layer. It was pointed out to me that when one is sanding the mold, or in sanding the jig, in sanding the plug, that one can very easily, if you start wet sanding, expose wood, and therefore you have wood swelling and creating all sorts of problems. So I'm proposing that I will do a dry sand first, and then coat the coat the polyester resin in one particular color, and then follow up with a second polyester resin coat of a different color, which I will then wet sand. If the first color shows through the second color, then I know I must stop before I get through to the wood and all of the problems that will cause. I'm also wondering if I shouldn't get a friend to cut some aluminium templates for me, circular templates that I can use as a measuring device for work purposes of this exercise. The fuselage diameter, to give you an approximation, is 320 millimeters, so that is quite a large diameter fuselage. But it may be as well to create an aluminium CNC cut template. I plan to build the plug as 2 crutches and join the 2 crutches together and dowel them into the next section, so that I do have continuity of the outside profile across the original joint and across the fuselage joints as well as the centerline. This is becoming a bigger and bigger exercise as I look into it, but I do want to build this particular size of model. The actual layout will probably be a 50 gram per square meter cloth, woven cloth, with a 4mm, perhaps even 5mm Aerotech layer in between the inner and outer skins of 50 gram per square meter glass. Where the Aerotech will be problematic is that it does not really lend itself to compound curves very well, so I do plan to slit the nose section and tail section Aerotech, where I will use a epoxy resin mixed up with a lot of fiberglass micro balloons, so that I can reduce the weight. If I get it to a paste-like consistency before I put on the last layer of glass, that will probably be about right. Now, in tinting the polyester resin that I'm going to use for the finish, I've got a polyester body filler which I shall use to fill in the gaps. I shall then sand that down and put on the first resin coat, which will be of a particular color. Now, one cannot use, I don't think it's advisable to use ordinary color tints, because most of the color tints that would apply to PVA paints or enamel paints that one might buy at a paint shop are normally water-based, whereas your specialist suppliers would be able to provide you with a suitable pigment. I want to use black for the mold itself, so I shall probably use white or a tinted white upper layer and some other different color below, but not red. Red always somehow manages to show through or blush through any coat painted over it, and to get a decent white or decent coverage of red, you have to use black. And I didn't want to use black on the actual plug itself. I'm not talking about gel coats here, because gel coats, although they are very often coloured, I'm only looking at a tint so that I can tell the difference between wet sanding and dry sanding, and that if I can avoid any swelling of the wood. This will create a hollow plug. I intend to reinforce the hollow plug with polyurethane expanding foam, and that should then give me a strong enough plug that will be able to take the forces and the shrinkage forces caused by creation of molds. I hope to be able to show you photographs of some of those test pieces and some of the other sections before I start on the plug for real. And so that brings me to the end of this episode, which we now need to bring into land, and we will talk to you again in February.